The bedroom was dim, lit only by the faint blue bleed from the digital clock on Brad's nightstand, 9:45 p.m. sharp. For 18 years, April Meyer had performed the same ritual at this exact hour. Brad would enter from the hallway, sleeves rolled to his elbows after whatever late work he claimed to be finishing in the office downstairs, carrying the small white pill between thumb and forefinger like a sacrament. "Here you go, sweetheart," he'd say, voice low and practiced. "You need your rest. Tomorrow's another long day for me." He'd press the pill into her palm, wait until she tipped it onto her tongue, then hand her the water glass. Always the same heavy crystal one he'd bought on their 5th anniversary trip to Napa. She'd swallow, feel the faint chalky bitterness slide down, and within minutes, the familiar heaviness would settle over her limbs like warm lead. She'd drift off, hearing his footsteps retreat, the soft click of the office door, the murmur of his voice on late-night calls she never questioned. Tonight, the pill sat tucked under her tongue, slowly dissolving while she kept her eyes closed and her breathing deep and even. She had practiced this in the bathroom mirror for 3 weeks, how to let her jaw slack just enough, how to let saliva pool so the bitter taste wouldn't make her gag. Brad stood over her longer than usual tonight. She felt the mattress dip as he sat on the edge, felt his fingers brush hair from her forehead. "Good girl," he whispered, the same phrase he'd used since their honeymoon. Then he rose, footsteps retreating down the hall, the 3rd step from the top creaking exactly as it always did. She counted to 300 in her head, 5 full minutes, before she opened her eyes. The room spun once, then steadied. Her mouth tasted like metal and defeat, but she was awake, fully, terrifyingly awake. She slipped out of bed in silence, bare feet finding the cold hardwood. She avoided the floorboard that groaned near the dresser, eased the bedroom door open an inch at a time. The hallway smelled of his cedar cologne and the faint chemical residue that clung to her tongue even now. Downstairs, the office door was closed, but a thin stripe of blue light leaked underneath. She heard his voice, low, amused, intimate, talking to someone on speaker. April descended the stairs like a ghost, one deliberate step after another, hand sliding along the banister so she wouldn't stumble. At the bottom, she pressed her back to the wall beside the office door and listened. "Is he completely out?" A woman's voice, smooth, confident, with the clipped precision of someone used to giving orders. "Like clockwork," Brad answered, chuckling the way he did when he closed a deal. 18 years and she still thinks it's for her anxiety. Phase 3 starts tonight. Final sweep before we move. April's knees buckled. She slid down the wall until she sat on the cold tile, arms wrapped around her shins. Phase 3. Final sweep. The words landed like stones in her stomach. She knew exactly what he meant. The trust fund from her grandmother, $487,312, locked in a conservatorship until April turned 35 next month, had been managed by Brad since the day they married. He'd convinced her it was easier that way. "Numbers stress you out, honey. Let me handle the boring stuff." She signed the papers in their honeymoon suite, still flushed from champagne and his kisses, never once imagining the ink would one day become chains. Brad's voice continued, casual, almost bored. "Victoria, the offshore account's ready. 2 weeks, we're gone, just like the others." Others. April pressed her palm to her mouth to keep the sob inside. She had always known on some buried animal level that something about Brad's past felt too clean, too curated. No ex-wives in old photo albums, no awkward holiday cards from former in-laws, no traces of anyone who had ever shared his life before her. She told herself it was romantic. He'd waited for her, the one. Now the word others echoed like gunshots. She heard the soft click of a mouse, the faint chime of an email arriving. Brad scrolled, narrating for Victoria as if reading a grocery list. Bank statements, her signature forged on every transfer after year 7, hotel receipts in Miami, Prague, Dubai, none of them with her. Jewelry purchases for you, darling. The emerald bracelet she thinks I bought her for our 10th, That was yours. She wore a cubic zirconia copy. A pause. Victoria laughed, light, delighted. You're terrible. I'm efficient, Brad corrected. Monica closed in 2011, overdose, coroner called it, accidental. Sandra, in 2005, vanished into debt after I drained the joint accounts. Both left quietly. April's different. She's comfortable. She won't fight. April's vision tunneled. Monica, Sandra, names she'd never heard. Women who had slept in the same bed, swallowed the same pills, trusted the same gentle hands. She crawled back upstairs on hands and knees, bile rising in hot waves. She reached the bedroom, forced herself under the covers, arranged her limbs exactly as they'd been, left arm bent, right hand tucked under cheek, face turned toward his empty pillow. When Brad returned 20 minutes later, he stood over her again, watching, listening. Then he bent and kissed her temple. "Good girl," he whispered. She didn't flinch. The next night, she repeated the performance. Pill under tongue, fake sleep, silent descent. This time, she carried her old phone, the one she'd kept hidden in a tampon box in the back of the linen closet for years. She propped it against a stack of law books on the shelf opposite the desk and hit record, and retreated to the hallway shadow. Brad sat in his robe, screen light carving deep lines into his face. He opened spreadsheets, bank portals, offshore login screens. April watched him type her maiden name, her birth date, the last four of her social, details she'd given him in trust, in love. He transferred $12,400 to an account labeled VC Holdings, then another $8,900, then $47,000. He spoke to Victoria again. Thumbprint tonight for the big one. She turns 35 in 16 days. Once the final chunk clears, we liquidate the rest. Janet's already asking when the assisted living deposit hits. Janet? His mother, the sweet woman who baked lemon bars and called April darling every Sunday brunch. Who knew? April filmed for 43 minutes. When Brad finally powered down, she slipped upstairs, retrieved the phone, and transferred the footage to a USB drive she'd hidden inside a hollowed-out book of poetry on the top shelf. She found more in the attic the following afternoon when Brad was at a client lunch. Behind the wedding album, pages still crisp, smiles frozen in time, was a single sheet of yellow legal paper in Brad's tight, slanted handwriting, dated 3 weeks before their engagement. Target: April Meyer, age 17 at Meet Cute, inheritance $480K plus trust fund matures at 35. Family interference minimal, estranged sister, parents deceased. Personality, trusting, low self-esteem, eager to please. Timeline, 15 to 20 years extraction. Playbook, same as Sandra. Bonus, pretty enough to enjoy the early years. April carried the page downstairs like forensic evidence from a murder that had happened inside her own body. She called Rebecca, her older sister, assistant district attorney specializing in financial abuse and elder exploitation, from a burner phone purchased with cash at a gas station during a midnight grocery run. Rebecca listened in silence for 11 minutes while April whispered everything. The pills, the footage, the names Monica and Sandra, the yellow paper, the offshore accounts. When April finished, Rebecca's voice came through steady as steel wrapped in velvet. Stay exactly where you are, pretend nothing's changed. I'm sending a team, quietly. Forensic accountant, private investigator, FBI liaison who owes me a favor. We build this airtight. You get one shot. Don't take it until we're ready. For 13 more nights, April played the perfect wife. She cooked his favorite coq au vin, laughed at his recycled jokes, let him press the pill into her palm while her pulse thundered in her ears. Each night she documented, keystrokes logged via hidden software she'd installed on his laptop during a romantic movie night, tiny cameras sewn into buttons on her nightgown, GPS trackers slipped under the carpet of his Mercedes. She learned Victoria Chen's face from surveillance stills the PI sent. Sharp cheekbones, confident smile, wanted in California, Nevada, and Florida for identity theft, marriage fraud, and conspiracy.
She learned Janet had been receiving monthly consulting fees from Brad's side accounts since 2006. On the final night, 2 days before her 35th birthday, Brad came home early, takeout bag swinging, an extra bottle of Pinot Noir in hand. "Celebratory," he said, pouring 2 glasses. April watched the fine white powder dissolve in hers while he plated the food. When he turned to grab napkins, she dumped the contents into the sink, refilled with plain wine from the bottle. He watched her drink, raised his glass. "To us," he toasted. "To truth," she murmured, too soft for him to catch. At 11:47 p.m., he carried her upstairs, limp, asleep, laid her gently on the bed, pressed her thumb to the tablet screen. The transfer confirmation glowed green. $487,312 moving to an account in the Caymans labeled New Horizons L.
$487,312 moving to an account in the Caymans labeled New Horizons LLC. The doorbell rang. Brad froze mid-kiss on her forehead. April opened her eyes. "Hi, honey," she said, voice calm and clear. "Trouble sleeping?" FBI agents flooded the house, badges flashing, voices sharp and commanding. Victoria was already in custody in the hotel parking lot, 2 miles away, mid-transfer. Janet arrived minutes later, keys jingling, shouting, "You were supposed to be sedated," before they read her rights. Brad stared at April like she had risen from the grave. "How?" he managed. 18 years, she said simply. "I finally woke up." In the courtroom, 6 months later, the evidence stood like an unassailable wall. Journals listing past targets, forged prescriptions dating back to 2005, money trails totaling $3.8 million across 4 victims, security footage of Brad crushing the real pills and measuring powder, the yellow legal sheet framed and projected on the courtroom screen. Brad received 15 years, Victoria 12 plus deportation proceedings, Janet 5 for conspiracy and money laundering. April walked out of the courthouse into sunlight that felt brand new on her skin. She sold the house, the one she had once loved decorating with throw pillows and framed photos, bought a small condo with floor-to-ceiling windows that opened to let in real air. She started a support group called Insomniacs, women who had slept through their own betrayals, who were learning, one meeting at a time, how to stay awake. She met David 18 months later, a quiet architect who listened to her entire story without once interrupting, without once looking away. He never asked her to close her eyes. He never handed her anything to swallow. Some nights she still woke at 2:47 a.m., heart racing, convinced she felt the familiar heaviness creeping back. But now she rose, made chamomile tea, sat on the balcony and watched the stars until the panic ebbed. She was awake, she was alive, and she was never going back to sleep.